The announcement crackled over the intercom, startling the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. Please remain calm." In the back of the plane, the flight attendants exchanged worried glances. One of their own had locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out. The usually smooth atmosphere of the flight was now charged with tension. Why would an experienced air hostess take such drastic action? What could be so urgent that she would shut herself away? Martha Alba had always been a dependable air hostess. After 20 years of flying, she had seen it all. But today was different. This was no ordinary flight. Her sudden disappearance into the bathroom and her refusal to come out were baffling. Her colleagues couldn't understand what had driven her to such an extreme. Just hours earlier, she had been her usual composed self, helping passengers with their luggage and reassuring nervous flyers. What had changed? Passengers whispered anxiously as the minutes ticked by. Martha, usually composed and professional, had now been in the bathroom for over 30 minutes. What could have driven her to such an extreme? Her sudden and inexplicable behavior had everyone on edge. Was it a personal issue, a health crisis, or something more sinister? The uncertainty was unsettling, and as whispers turned into murmurs of concern, the cabin crew knew they needed to act quickly before panic set in. Her colleague Jane knocked gently on the door. "Martha, are you okay?" Silence. Jane's mind raced back to the morning's briefing, wondering if there was any clue she had missed. Martha had seemed fine, but now this silence was deafening. The rest of the crew watched anxiously, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Jane thought about Martha's usually calm demeanor and how out of character this was. What could have happened between the briefing and now? The captain radioed in. "If she doesn't come out soon, we might have to turn the plane around." The mere suggestion sent a ripple of panic through the cabin. Turning the plane around was a last resort, one that would cause major disruptions and alarm the passengers even more. The crew exchanged worried glances, realizing the gravity of the situation. Every second counted, and the stakes were getting higher. Martha's actions were now threatening the entire flight's schedule and safety. They needed a solution, and they needed it fast. Martha, 45, from a small town in Ohio, had always been a pillar of strength. Her colleagues knew her as reliable and compassionate, qualities that had made her an excellent flight attendant. She had joined the airline industry right out of college, driven by a passion for travel and helping people. Over the years, she had built a reputation for her professionalism and calm under pressure. But today, something had clearly shaken her. Understanding who she was only deepened the mystery of why she had locked herself in the bathroom. Martha was married to Tom, a college professor, and they had 2 teenage children, Emily and Jack. Her family was her world, and she balanced her demanding job with her role as a devoted wife and mother. Her colleagues often heard her talking about her children's achievements and her husband's latest school projects. She was the glue that held her family together. She always made sure to be present for the important moments, despite her busy travel schedule. Knowing this, it was hard to believe that anything could have caused her to behave so erratically on this flight. In her spare time, Martha loved gardening and baking. Her home was always filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies, and her garden was a testament to her green thumb. She often brought homemade treats to work, much to the delight of her colleagues. Gardening was her escape, a way to unwind and connect with nature after the rigors of flying. Baking, on the other hand, was her way of sharing love and care. These hobbies painted a picture of a woman who found joy in simple, nurturing activities, making her current predicament even more puzzling. Despite her calm exterior, Martha had her fears. She worried about the safety of her family while she was away, and occasionally felt the weight of being away from home. The thought of something going wrong during a flight was her greatest fear. Although she had always been diligent in her duties, the unpredictable nature of her job sometimes kept her up at night. The crew knew about these fears, but they had never seen them manifest in such a dramatic way. It was clear that something profound was troubling her. Martha's dedication to her job was unparalleled. She prided herself on ensuring the safety and comfort of her passengers, treating every flight as if her family was on board. Her meticulous attention to detail and her unwavering commitment had earned her several accolades from the airline. She had handled medical emergencies, unruly passengers, and mechanical failures with grace and efficiency. Her colleagues looked up to her as a role model, so they couldn't understand why she'd act this way. Jane tried one last time to coax Martha out. "Martha, whatever it is, we can handle it together." But the bathroom door remained firmly shut, and the tension inside the cabin continued to mount. The minutes felt like hours as the crew tried to maintain calm among the passengers. Jane's mind raced, trying to think of anything that could reassure Martha and convince her to open the door. The plane was now preparing for an emergency landing, and the stakes were getting higher by the second. Everyone on board was holding their breath. Desperate, a passenger, Mr. Roberts, decided to take action. He scribbled a note and slipped it under the bathroom door, praying for a response. The note read, "Martha, please tell us what's going on. We're all worried." The entire cabin watched in tense silence, hoping this gesture would break through to Martha. Mr. Roberts, a frequent flyer himself, had never seen anything like this. The uncertainty was unbearable, and everyone hoped that Martha would finally explain her strange behavior. The flight attendants braced themselves for whatever might come next. Martha's response was chilling. "Do not open this door. Tell the captain to prepare for an emergency landing." The weight of the moment began to sink in. What was happening inside the bathroom? The captain was immediately informed, and preparations for an emergency landing were expedited. The crew's minds raced with questions. What could be so urgent that Martha felt the need to lock herself away and insist on an emergency landing? The passengers sensed the urgency, their anxiety palpable. Jane relayed the message to the captain, who began the procedures for an emergency landing. The passengers were uneasy, but they trusted the crew. They had seen Martha's professionalism firsthand, and her colleagues vouched for her instincts. If Martha believed an emergency landing was necessary, there had to be a good reason. This small act of trust was a brief respite from the tension that gripped the cabin. But as the plane descended, everyone knew that the real test was yet to come. They had to trust that Martha's actions, however mysterious, were for the best. Suddenly, the plane hit turbulence. The seatbelt signs flashed on, and Martha's colleagues feared the worst. What was she hiding in there? The sudden jolts and shakes added to the passengers' anxiety, making the situation even more precarious. Everyone was on edge, their imaginations running wild with what could be happening behind that locked door. The crew struggled to maintain order and keep the passengers calm as the turbulence intensified. Each jolt was a harsh reminder of the unknown threat that Martha had hinted at. The flight was descending into chaos. Martha's voice came through the door, strained and urgent. "Please, I can't leave. You don't understand what's at stake." Her words sent a chill through everyone who heard them. The passengers exchanged worried glances, the sense of dread deepening. What could possibly be so critical that Martha couldn't leave the bathroom? Her colleagues were now questioning everything they thought they knew about her. The captain's voice over the intercom, urging everyone to remain seated and calm, did little to ease the growing tension. Passengers exchanged nervous glances. What could possibly be so critical that Martha couldn't leave the bathroom? Her cryptic messages and refusal to explain herself left everyone on edge. The crew struggled to maintain composure as they tried to reassure the passengers, all the while grappling with their own fears and doubts. What was Martha hiding? Why had she taken such drastic measures? The uncertainty was unbearable, and the tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone was waiting for answers that seemed just out of reach. The captain's voice was calm but firm. "We're diverting to the nearest airport. Everyone, please remain seated." Tension hung heavy in the cabin. The unknown threat that Martha had alluded to loomed large in everyone's minds. What awaited them once they landed? The crew prepared for the emergency procedures, their training taking over even as their minds raced with worry. Passengers held their breath, clinging to their seats as the plane descended. The sense of impending danger was inescapable, and everyone knew that whatever was happening was serious. Jane tried one last time. "Martha, whatever it is, we can help you. Just tell us." But the door remained locked, and the seconds ticked by. The captain's preparations for an emergency landing were well underway, and the urgency of the situation was clear. The crew's attempts to coax Martha out had failed, and the passengers' anxiety was reaching a fever pitch. Every moment felt like an eternity as they awaited the landing. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure to resolve the situation before they touched down was immense. Mr. Roberts, the passenger who had slipped the note, volunteered to stay near the bathroom door, listening for any signs of distress. The crew quickly coordinated with him, ensuring he knew what to do if Martha made any sudden moves. The captain gave the final instructions for the emergency landing, and the crew prepared the passengers. Everyone was tense, but the clear communication and structured plan provided a sliver of reassurance. The plane was descending rapidly, and the anticipation of what awaited them on the ground was almost unbearable. Mr. Roberts heard a faint hissing sound coming from inside the bathroom. It was something he couldn't identify, but it sent chills down his spine. He quickly informed the flight attendants, who exchanged worried glances. What could that sound mean? The passengers, already on edge, noticed the crew's unease and grew more anxious. The sound was a new, ominous element in an already tense situation. It raised more questions than answers and deepened the mystery surrounding Martha's actions. The need to land and resolve the situation was more pressing than ever. Just as the plane began its descent, the turbulence worsened. Passengers gripped their armrests, the sense of impending doom growing stronger. The crew struggled to keep everyone calm as the plane rocked violently. The turbulence seemed to mirror the chaos inside the cabin, each jolt a reminder of the unresolved crisis. What was happening in the bathroom, and could they reach the ground safely? The crew's training kicked in, but the added stress of the turbulence made the situation even more precarious. Everyone braced for a rough landing. A passenger near the front of the plane stood up, demanding answers. "What is going on back there?" The flight attendants struggled to maintain calm. They had no clear answers to give, only reassurances that everything would be resolved soon. The passenger's outburst was making an already unbearable situation worse, and the crew worked quickly to de-escalate the situation. They needed to keep everyone as calm as possible until they landed. The sense of unease was spreading, and the need for a resolution was becoming more urgent with each passing minute. The captain addressed the cabin once more. "Please, everyone stay calm. We're handling the situation. We will land shortly." But the tension only grew. The passengers were desperate for answers, and the captain's reassurances, while necessary, did little to alleviate their fears. The crew continued to manage the cabin, trying to maintain a semblance of order. Every minute felt like an hour as they awaited the emergency landing. The weight of the unknown threat hung heavy in the air, and everyone was on edge, waiting for the plane to touch down. Jane, feeling helpless, turned to Mr. Roberts. "Did she say anything else to you?" He shook his head. "Just that we couldn't open the door." The lack of information was frustrating and unsettling. The crew needed answers, but Martha's cryptic message and the mysterious hissing sound only deepened the mystery. The plane's descent was almost complete, and the crew knew that whatever was happening, they would have to face it head-on once they landed. Martha's muffled voice was heard again. "Please, trust me, for everyone's sake." Jane felt a knot in her stomach. They had to believe her. The crew was torn between following protocol and trusting their colleagues' urgent pleas. The passengers, sensing the crew's unease, became more anxious. The situation was reaching a critical point, and the need to land and resolve the crisis was paramount. The crew's faith in Martha was the only thing keeping them grounded as they prepared for the emergency landing. They had to hope that Martha's actions were for the best. The captain made an announcement. "We have emergency services ready on the ground. Stay seated." Jane realized they were on their own until they landed. The crew braced themselves for whatever awaited them. The decision to trust Martha's judgment had been made, and now they had to follow through. The passengers were tense, but the crew's calm demeanor provided some reassurance. The plane was moments from touching down, and the urgency of the situation was at its peak. The final moments before landing were filled with a tense, expectant silence. With the runway in sight, the captain prepared for an emergency landing. Martha's colleagues held their breath, hoping they would make it. The plane's descent was smooth, but the tension inside the cabin was palpable. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the moment they would touch down and the emergency personnel would take over. The anticipation of what awaited them was almost unbearable. The crew's focus was on ensuring a safe landing, but their thoughts were with Martha and whatever crisis she had been dealing with behind that locked door. As the plane touched down, emergency personnel rushed on board. The passengers watched in silence as they headed straight for the bathroom. The crew stepped aside, allowing the professionals to take over. Martha's colleagues exchanged worried glances, hoping that whatever was happening, it would soon be resolved. The minutes felt like hours as the emergency team worked. The passengers, though anxious, remained seated, their eyes fixed on the back of the plane. The resolution of the mystery that had gripped everyone for the past hour was finally at hand. Martha emerged, pale and shaken. She held up a book cover. "There was an air breach in the toilet. I had to seal it. If I moved, we would all be in danger. Her explanation was met with stunned silence. The gravity of what she had done began to sink in. The passengers and crew alike realized that Martha's quick thinking had prevented a potential disaster. The relief was palpable as everyone began to understand the seriousness of the situation and the heroism of Martha's actions. The passengers let out a collective sigh of relief. The crisis had been averted, thanks to Martha's quick thinking and bravery. The crew immediately sprang into action, assisting the passengers and ensuring everyone was safe. The emergency personnel conducted a thorough check, confirming Martha's account of the air breach. The tension that had gripped the plane dissipated, replaced by a sense of gratitude and admiration for Martha. The situation had been resolved, and everyone could finally breathe easy, knowing they were out of danger. The passengers exited the plane, many visibly shaken but thankful to be on the ground safely. Emergency personnel ensured everyone was unharmed, and the airline offered immediate support. Media crews swarmed the scene, capturing the relieved faces and tense expressions. The sense of relief was pressed upon everyone, but so did the underlying tension about what had happened. Martha and the crew were praised for their actions, and the airline promised a thorough investigation. The story was just beginning to unfold, and the public's interest was piqued. The incident quickly became headline news. Major media outlets covered the story extensively, focusing on Martha's heroism and the mysterious air breach. Interviews with passengers highlighted their fear and gratitude, while experts speculated on the possible causes of the breach. The airline's reputation took a hit as the public demanded answers. The intense media scrutiny put pressure on the company to respond swiftly and transparently. The story captivated the nation, with many praising Martha's quick thinking as a life-saving act of bravery. Several passengers decided to sue the airline, claiming negligence and emotional distress. They argued that the airline had failed to ensure the plane's safety, putting their lives at risk. Legal experts weighed in on the potential ramifications for the airline, predicting a lengthy and costly legal battle. The lawsuits added to the public's demand for accountability and transparency. The company faced mounting pressure to resolve the situation and restore its tarnished image. The legal battles were set to become a central focus in the unfolding drama. In response to the media coverage and public outcry, the government launched an investigation into the incident. Regulatory agencies scrutinized the airline's maintenance records and safety protocols. Officials promised a thorough examination to ensure such an incident would not occur again. The investigation aimed to uncover any lapses in the airline's safety procedures and hold those responsible accountable. The government's involvement underscored the seriousness of the situation and the need for systemic changes within the airline industry. The investigation started with the immediate repair personnel at the airport from which the plane had departed. Each crew member was interviewed about the maintenance checks conducted on the plane. They all reported that during their inspections, no issues were found, and the bathroom appeared to be in perfect working order. The investigators noted that the personnel had a strong track record and no history of negligence. This raised questions about how an air breach could have occurred, pushing the investigation further up the chain of command. With the maintenance crew cleared, the investigation expanded to include the airline's broader operational procedures. Lower management, responsible for overseeing flight patterns and repairs, were interviewed. They provided records showing that all maintenance checks had been performed as required. There were no indications of irregularities or skipped procedures. The investigators began to suspect that the issue might lie higher up the management chain, suggesting deeper systemic problems within the company. The focus started shifting towards the decisions made at the top levels of the airline. The investigation moved to the airline's upper management, seeking any signs of oversight or misconduct. Executives responsible for procurement and maintenance budgeting were questioned. Initial findings suggested a troubling pattern. Managers had been cutting costs by purchasing cheaper planes and reporting them as more expensive models. This discrepancy raised alarms about potential safety compromises made for financial gain. The investigators were determined to uncover the full extent of these practices and hold those responsible accountable. The scandal threatened to engulf the airline's leadership. The investigation unveiled a shocking reality. Top managers had been squandering company funds for years. They bought cheaper planes, passing them off as state-of-the-art aircraft in financial records. This fraudulent practice saved money but compromised safety standards. The air breach on Martha's flight was a direct result of these substandard planes. The company's deception had put countless lives at risk, all for the sake of profit. The public outrage grew as details emerged, and calls for justice intensified. The airline faced a crisis of unprecedented scale. The revelation of the airline's fraudulent practices sparked widespread public outrage. Customers, aviation experts, and media pundits demanded accountability and systemic changes. Social media platforms were flooded with calls for the airline's executives to be prosecuted and for stricter regulations in the industry. The company's reputation was in tatters, and trust in its safety practices had eroded. The incident became a rallying point for broader discussions about corporate greed and the importance of rigorous safety standards. The airline industry faced increased scrutiny and pressure to reform. In response to the scandal, the airline announced sweeping reforms. Top executives implicated in the fraudulent activities were fired, and new leadership was brought in to restore trust. The company pledged to improve its safety standards, increase transparency, and ensure rigorous maintenance protocols. Regulators introduced stricter oversight measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. Martha and her crew were honored for their heroism, becoming symbols of integrity and dedication. The changes marked a turning point for the airline, aiming to rebuild its reputation and ensure passengers' safety. Martha received widespread recognition for her bravery during the crisis. She was awarded several commendations and became a spokesperson for airline safety. Her story inspired many, highlighting the crucial role of flight attendants in ensuring passenger safety. The airline industry began to emphasize the importance of training and preparedness for all crew members. Martha's quick thinking not only saved lives, but also sparked significant changes in aviation safety protocols. Her legacy became a testament to the impact of individual courage and the necessity of systemic integrity. The airline industry took significant steps toward improving safety and accountability. New regulations ensured better oversight of aircraft procurement and maintenance. Airlines adopted more transparent practices, and passenger confidence gradually began to restore. Martha continued to advocate for safety and integrity in aviation, using her experience to educate others. The incident served as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance and ethical practices in the industry. As the airline moved forward, it aimed to build a safer, more trustworthy future for all who took to the skies. In the days that followed, Martha received numerous messages of gratitude. She realized that her years of experience had prepared her for this moment. The outpouring of appreciation from passengers and colleagues alike reinforced her sense of purpose and dedication. The incident had been a harrowing experience, but it also served as a powerful reminder of the impact of her work. Martha felt a renewed sense of pride in her role as an air hostess, and a deep appreciation for the support of her colleagues and family.
Do you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.